Hey guys, and welcome to Panda Playtime. Today we are going to create a container and center it on the screen and do a basic scene change. Alright, I've got Panda open here, and first off I want to tell you guys, if you are using the full version of Panda Editor, make sure you update it to the latest version, okay, 1.3.1. And also you can update the engine itself. I'll show you how to do that really quickly. So you know where your files for the actual editor are, but to update the project, the engine of the project to the latest one, this is what you do, okay? So when you are inside, when you've loaded your project up, you go Alt and Shift, and then you can click Update, okay, and then release those keys and press yes to update. That will update it to the latest master branch from GitHub. If you are wanting to update it to the latest developed version of Panda, the engine, okay, you will hold Alt Shift, Update, and keep holding the Shift key down as you press yes, okay, and that will update it to the latest developed version. So what do I have it on here? I'll just double check. We're on engine 2.2.0. Okay, so I think that I'm just on the master branch here, so that's okay. So let's load this up and let's get this started. Okay, so last week we talked about how to about different scaling modes and how to use the resize method and all that sort of stuff. So today I just want to do a quick recap, just so we know where we're at. We've basically created a sprite, made an atlas with one image on it, and we're using that image to make this sprite over here, and we're putting it on this stage. So if you click on modules here, toggle, so we can see the different modules we've got. We go to config. I just want to take this back and comment out resize, and we're going to do center again, and we're going to test this in the browser. So as you see, this is our stage 320 by 320, and our image is displaying at 0.0, and it is being manipulated by its center because its anchor point is in the center. Okay, so that's what we're seeing right now. Now, just for the sake of explaining this a little bit better, I'm going to put the image in the center of the stage, which will be 160 by 160, since we're working with a 320 by 320 stage. Okay, so here you see this is your stage here, and there's just a little bit of space left over in the bottom. If you look at it in the browser, this is how we see it here, okay? Now, if you have a look, it is being centered horizontally, and it is also being centered vertically. Now, the problem here is that with this, all you're going to see is stuff inside this box. If you place anything outside of your coordinates, this being 0, 0, and this being 320 by 320, if you press put anything out here, for example, or out here, you will not see it. The way to fix this is to use the resize method. Okay, so I'm going to take that back, and when you use resize, center becomes redundant. So let's just save this and go back here, and we're going to reload. Okay, as you see now, what happens with resize is the stage gets moved. The coordinates get moved over here. That is because now the browser is using, the stage is starting at the browser 0.0 coordinate, and it is showing everything else to the left, to the right, and to the bottom. Okay, so if I resize this, you will see that it's going to show more to the bottom, and this way more to the right. So basically the stage is stuck to the top left corner. The way to fix this is very simple, and what you do is, see all this commented out code that I've added? Let's talk about it. So we're going to add a container. Really quickly going to talk you guys through why I use this .container and not just container, or not var.container. So if I use var, which is basically a local variable, that means that it's local to this function, the initialize function inside the main scene. Now, this scene can have as many functions as we want. It's got some system functions like init, update, etc., and you can also create your own. Problem is, if you use a var, that means that you can only use it inside one of these functions and it won't be available. You can't, for example, call it from here. Update function won't know what it is because it's local to this function here. Now if I say this.container, that means that I can also use it here, okay, by using it is local to the entire scene and not just its function, one of its functions. Now you could also do global, okay, and do that. However, the problem there is that this is good and it's going to be available across all the functions inside the scene and also across different modules or other scenes. However, this gets a bit dangerous because you can override some really important variables, and like let's say you've got many scenes and you can run into troubles because you might use the same variable names and then you don't know. It gets very hard to project manage, okay? So definitely use globals sparingly. So we're going to go back to this because that is the safest and best thing to do, and I do this all the time pretty much for all my stuff because for me it's just easy to stay consistent. So this is what I call most things, even my sprites, etc. okay? Now we've got it set up. Now as you see, we're setting up the container and we're adding it to the stage. Now here we've got a sprite that we created before, but what we want to do is, instead of adding it to the stage now, because we've got a container on the stage, we are going to take this out and we're going to add the sprite to the container. Now the container is exactly what it sounds like. You put a container on the stage, you put a bunch of objects in it, and you can move that container around. A use case scenario would, for example, be something like you want to do a shake screen effect, okay, and you've got your foreground, background, middle ground with all your characters and sprites on it, and then you've got like a UI container. So you've got two separate containers, a level container and a UI container. So you can shake the level container with all the sprites and backgrounds and everything in it and do a shake screen effect, but the UI container will remain still. So everything underneath will be shaking, the UI container will be perfectly still. So that's a simple use case scenario for how you would use containers. Really easy to set up your levels this way, and gives you a lot of flexibility. I love doing things this way. Normally what I do is set up something like a BG container, MG container, FG container, and then do like a UI container, and then I also do like a TV, maybe for standing for television, like a box, or maybe for the initials of my name, who knows, but I just like using these little short two-letter names because it makes sense. So I do those BG, MG, FG, UI, and I put them all inside the TV container. So I can handle the TV container as one, and I can also handle all the other containers separately. It's a really easy way to do it, okay? So basically we've now added it to the container, and as you see, everything else is exactly the same. So if you go to the browser, we save this, go back to the browser, everything should be exactly the same, nothing's changed, okay? Right, so we've got that set up. Now what we need to do to fix that thing we talked about, we need to center our container inside the browser, okay? So again, this is very easy. What we need to do is work out where the center of the browser is and put the container there, and I've already put a little code here. We are going to run this code inside the update function, which is a function already set up for us, and it's available to the scene, and it gets updated every frame, okay? So it's going to continuously keep checking where the position is supposed to be, okay? So this.container.position, and we're going to set it to game.system.width divided by 2, which is the actual width of the browser at whatever point when you're resizing it, minus game.system.original width divided by 2. So we divided by 2, then minus game.system.original width divided by 2, and then we do exactly the same thing for height. Game.system.height divided by 2 minus game.system.original height divided by 2, which is the original, the 320 by 320. Okay, so that will then center the game for you. As you see, now it's being centered. Now again in our browser, perfectly centered. This is where our stage is now, our container is now. If I now place a ball here, you will now see it, or outside of the boundaries, you will now see everything outside here. This is a really nice way to get your thing working on devices, your game working on devices. You can make your backgrounds a little bit bigger, taller, wider, and it will display on an iPad, which is more of a 4:3 ratio, and then something like a 16:9, which is more of a wide movie-like ratio. Most of the new phones come in that sort of in those dimensions, and you will see a little bit more to the sides, and on an iPad you might see a little bit more to the top. It'll, so basically you want to work with like, that's the reason we eventually going to be working with something like 320 by 480 or 480 by 320, because it's a nice sort of square-ish but not too square ratio, and it lends itself both to wide and tall. Okay, and you just again design those backgrounds a little bit wider, taller, and everything will work out nicely, I'm telling you. Okay, so we've got this all set up, really basic. So this is a big part, because we've got a container, we've got a sprite, we've already put it on, we've got a scene. Now what we need to do is learn how to do a basic scene change, because that is important if you want to set up some levels. I think it's nice to keep things in different files, because if you've got many, depends on what sort of game you're working for. I usually make games where I've got a lot of different levels, and they all differ from each other. So it gets very crazy looking at all that code, pages and pages, you're scrolling down. Instead, it's nicer to just keep level 1 in file 1, level 2 in file level 2, etc. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you how to do that now. So we're going to click on modules and make sure that the modules are visible. So you want to see this part here. Okay, this is your these are your scenes. Okay, and also in this view all your classes I think will be visible too. So make sure the modules are visible and click plus, and what you want to do is create a menu module. Okay, and now holding down shift, if you press this, as you see, it will create module name. So what we want to do is click modules again, so you go to the scene and classes view. Okay, so not the modules view now, go to this view, click the plus button again, but if you click the plus button now by itself, you create a class. We'll talk about classes later, so undo. What you want to do is hold shift down, click the plus button while you're in the scene and classes view, okay, and it will create a scene for you. You can also type this code in by hand, but it just makes it very easy to do it here. Okay, now the modules, your files will be small letter, okay, and for the scene name we're going to make sure we use a capital. This is a really good convention to use for your scene names, and for your classes use a capital, and for your files, etc., use a small letter. Okay, now we're going to save this, and now if you go back to so you can click save or go Control S, and then if you go to modules, you will now see all three: config, main, and menu. Now here you see that we've added our asset pack.atlas. Since this game is pretty simple, we're just going to be probably using one atlas, so we're just going to load it here. You do not need to load it again in this scene, because it's already preloaded there. There are ways of doing things more complicated, like you can preload certain atlases for a level, then unload them and load new ones for the next level, but that's all a little bit advanced, and we can get into that later. But right now we've loaded the atlas, the atlas, and everything here is set up. So technically what we could do is just copy all this code from here, okay, and paste it into the menu. Just replace this init function. I just like spacing this out a little bit so you can, it's just easier to read, and we save it. Okay, now in the main, we are going to place the ball at 0, 160. So 160 and 0, so top and X in the center, but on the top. Okay, so it's going to be over here. And in the menu, we're going to keep it in the center, just so you see that we've changed scenes. Now, there's one more thing we need to do, and that's require. So just after thing, I just need to check my notes on this one, because I keep forgetting about the syntax of this. Just give me 2 seconds, guys. Keep forgetting where the require goes. Okay, so just after module, just all right, yeah, got it. so here we'll just put it on a separate line, and we'll do require and bracket. And what we'll do here is you will list all the other modules, the other files that you will need main file to load. Okay, now if you were setting up all your scenes inside one file, you wouldn't have to require the other files. Okay, but so this is I've already preloaded. I'll show you quickly here. I've already preloaded the playground, and we went to scene 12, scene, and basic. And as you see here, you know they have a couple of scenes set up: create scene main 2, and they switch between them, or Emily does. He made this example. Now, as you see, there is no require needed here, so because it is set up in one file. However, we are using more files, and so we need to require the menu file. So we just go require and this, and we go game.menu, and we saved it. Now, if you had more, like let's say you had game.level1, etc., you would put a comma right here. Just remember to do that. But since we only have one, you don't need that comma. Now, also remember that between these functions, you need to have that little comma here, because if you don't have it, okay, then you will get an error. Also, you will get an error, I think, if I put a comma there, okay, and I try and run it, pretty sure I'll get an error. No, that works, so that's okay. But if I miss out the comma here, then I will, yeah, there you go. So you definitely need the comma between the functions. So make sure that's there, okay? It's a pretty easy thing to miss out, and then you know, searching for your error. I mean, Panda's good, and it tells you and it leads you to the error, but that's what it is. Sometimes, you know, you do forget about those, and it's very easy to do. Okay, so we are requiring the game menu. Like I said, if you've got other files, you will just list them all here. So my main file, I usually do a lot of setup, and I just set up a whole bunch of stuff, load sound effects, etc., etc. You know, maybe show a splash screen, something like that, and then I do all my other stuff in a menu file, menu scene. I set up my play button and do a title screen, etc., etc. Then I've got a bunch of level scenes, stuff like that. All right, so as you see, we've got this done and this done. So now the only thing that's left is somehow change to the next scene. We'll just do a really basic one, and we're going to use this simple function available to us just for the sake of this tutorial. Later on, we'll actually make a clickable button. But for now, again, add a comma after update, and we're just going to paste this function in. And basically all that does is game.system.setScene, and we're just going to take this out. That's something else. We'll worry about that later. And for now, we're just going to type in menu. Now you want to make sure, wait a second, I just want to double check here. You want to make sure that you're using the capital, because as you see here, this is what we're loading, the scene, okay? But not the module. The module is already required here. We're now loading the scene, telling it to go to this part here. So you want to load menu with a capital M, and that is the reason for the different lettering, using capitals and lowercase. Okay, so that's all done. So we don't want to take this out. Don't pay attention to this little commented thing. That was to restart a scene. So that little piece of code where it says game scene.name, it actually reads the scene's current scene's name, and if you click, then it will reload the current scene. So let's not worry about it now. That's very useful for a reset button, for example. But for now, let's just worry about game.system.setScene menu, and it will go to this. Okay, and now in this scene, we have set it to, again, we've got the update function, which centers the container. Everything else is set up the same, and we are putting the ball in the center. So technically what should happen now is we should click this, and it should go to the next file. Let's see. Yeah, perfect, easy. Honestly, couldn't be easier, guys. Make sure you update Panda. Make sure you update your engine. Bug fixes are continuously coming out, as well as a lot of new features. Emily's been super busy, and he's been releasing lots of plugins. This engine is absolutely amazing. So just make sure that you keep up with the latest additions and stuff. Let's just check this in the browser before we call this done for today. Okay, so we've loaded up. again, this is showing at 160 and 0y. So that's right at the top. We click and we are in the next scene. Okay, later on we'll learn how to do transitions, things like that. Very easy to do fade out effects and stuff like that. But for now, this is easy and simple enough. We're on the 20-minute mark. I like the time. Not too long, not too short, and we get through quite a bit of information, but not overloading it. Okay, so I think that's it for today, guys. Hopefully you learned something. Again, if you get stuck with something, just pay attention to those little things like the missing commas and, you know, bits like that. And use Panda. It does tell you and leads you to the error. And if you do get really stuck, also make sure that this little button here opens up the console, and it does see it in certain cases. Like I can take this out now and I can reload it. Wait a second, let's just reload the project. That was a previous error, right? And if I look at it now, there won't be anything there because, you know, everything is running smoothly. But it tells you, if you go to the console, just remember it tells you where the errors lie, and it tells you a little bit more than Panda. So just make sure that you use this debug console. It is very important, and it actually leads you to the line, and, you know, it makes it very easy for you to debug. So again, hope you learned something today. Hope that was useful, and I will see you guys next time.